Okay, so this is our presentation on service dogs. Um, I went over the history of service dogs in Western society. In regards to the history of service dogs in Western society, the utilization of dogs can be traced back to ancient civilizations. Dogs were trained as guards, herders, hunters, which was the original use of service dogs. One turning point during history was World War One, where service dogs gained prominence. Dogs were taught to deliver communications between troops, find injured soldiers, serve as sentinels, alerting the men to the presence of an enemy. Sergeant Stubby, a dog who saved countless of lives, was the most notable and decorated war dog of World War One. He aided the infantry and was of so much use when catching the enemies. Stubby not only led medics to wounded soldiers, he alerted comrades when a German spy tried to sneak past the ranks. During World War II, service dogs were trained even further in skills such as tracking, detecting landmines, and providing a therapy outlet for soldiers. Service dogs were greatly admired and valued among the soldiers, and veterans experienced the positive impacts at firsthand. In addition to war dogs aiding as a service animal, the concept of guide dogs for visually impaired emerged around this time. These dogs that were trained by the first guide dog training school marked a significant milestone in the history of service dogs. Dorothy Heron Eustace founded this training school and contributed greatly to the foundation and its teaching for guide dogs. As said in this report, the Seeing Eye had contributed to freedom and independence of some 3,000 blind people. The report reflected they have come from every state in the Union, from Canada, Puerto Rico, and on occasion from several foreign countries. They have come from all stations in life to be able to walk with heads high and to seek their own fulfillment. Um, Beyond the war, service dogs were expanded and trained to assist not only individuals with visually impaired abilities, but also physical disabilities such as retrieving objects and opening doors. Service dogs were also trained to help individuals that are deaf or have a hard time hearing. In modern times, many service dogs have been trained for the use of mental health aid. They have been able to help individuals with conditions such as PTSD and anxiety. They offer emotional support and a sense of security for these individuals. And then service dogs have been crucial to the development of Western society because they offer people with disabilities essential support and help. There's so many different types of dogs trained for each type of disability. The only breed of working animal that is permitted to enter public spaces with its handler is a service animal. Many of these canines have undergone lengthy training in order to acquire the abilities required for the jobs. They are extremely well socialized, have excellent manners in public, enjoy interactions with both people and other animals. Service dogs are not considered pets. Instead, they are trained assistant animals that are excluded from most laws governing animals in general. Unfortunately, service dogs were not even legally recognized until the 1990s. It wasn't until the American Disabilities Act where the US defined a service animal as a dog that is individually trained to do work or perform tasks for an individual with a disability. A big emphasis in Western society around the culture of service dogs is that they have assisted people with visual impairment. Individuals with physical limitations can now live whole new lives thanks to service dogs who provide them more freedom and mobility. These incredible beings can be taught to carry out a wide range of duties such as opening doors, fetching goods, turning on lights, and helping with balance and stability. Service dogs can successfully pull wheelchairs uphill, rescue drop things, and provide a counterbalance to prevent falls for wheelchair users. Service canines enable people with physical limitations to traverse their settings more readily and confidently by carrying out these activities. One of the first instances of a um one of the first instances, oh my God, I'm on the wrong slide. Sorry guys. Yeah, right here. Um One of the first instances of a service animal helping an individual with a disability was a dog named Buddy, where he helped a visually impaired man safely cross a busy street. And then, as said before, Dorothy founded the Seeing Eye School for Dogs in 1928. Her legacy has been long lasting as the concept of service animals has expanded tremendously. Guide dogs, which are trained to expressly to assist those who are blind or visually impaired, offer a crucial support by directing their handlers safely around hazards, negotiating, I mean, uh, congested streets and identifying landmarks. Similar to guide dogs, hearing dogs are taught to respond to different noises, alerting hearing impaired or deaf people to alarms, doorbells, and other auditory cues. The first hearing canine program was established in San Francisco in 1975. The first nonprofit organization established its doors the same year. Bonnie Bergen, a canine researcher, was responsible for this establishment. This organization trained dogs to become specialized therapy dogs with the required abilities to help their human partners with challenging tasks. These trained service dogs increase their handlers' independence and safety, allowing them to engage more fully in society. Service dogs have also become crucial partners for those who suffer from mental health issues like post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety disorder, and autism spectrum disorders in recent years. However, the therapeutic potential of animals was first recognized in the late 1800s, which was much earlier on. Only in recent years, therapy dogs have had more recognition. When their handlers have anxiety or panic episodes, trained psychiatric service dogs can help calm them down, stop them from engaging in self-harming behaviors, provide them with a sense of security in crowded or intimidating situations. These dogs can provide comfort and companionship, easing symptoms and improving general well-being since they are sensitive to their handler's emotional states. In regards to the history of therapy dogs, a child psychotherapist named Boris Levinson happened to notice in the early 1960s that a non-verbal 9-year-old boy started to communicate when his dog Jingles stayed with them during their therapy sessions. He continued to see comparable outcomes in other kids who had trouble talking. Later, he published a report on pet-oriented child psychotherapy, earning him the title of the father of animal-assisted therapy. And then veterans who have suffered physical and psychological wounds during combat have found that service dogs are especially helpful. PTSD, depression, and anxiety symptoms are lessened by the special attachment that develops between a service dog and a veteran. These canines are capable of doing things like rousing their handlers from nightmares, erecting barriers in busy places to lessen anxiety, and giving their handlers a sense of stability during the times of mental turmoil. For veterans, mental health and quality of life can be dramatically improved by the companionship and unwavering affection that service dogs provide. And then that's it for me.
Perfect. So I did a bit about the background and history of service dogs. There's been many different records of dogs servicing mankind, and it's been known that for thousands of years they've been used to help uh, humans. So there's proof that uh, they were used in the ancient Roman city of Herculaneum and in Europe and China. There's Chinese scroll paintings, one of which I believe is on this slide, which show that they were used to lead blind people. And then, as Joey said, the first service dogs were used to help people who suffer with visual impairments. And then the first guide dog school was opened in 1916. It was opened in Oldenburg, Germany, with help from the German Red Cross. And German Dr. Gerhard Stalling opened it and directed it. And he opened it after seeing his German Shepherd assist one of his blind patients when he was caring for them. And then next slide, please. Thank you. So the early stages of guide dogs. Dorothy Harrison Eustace, an American dog trainer, visited Dr. Stallings' guide dog school in 1927. And she was so impressed about the methods and successes of the program that she wrote about it. She was based in Switzerland at the time, but her article was published in a US newspaper, the Saturday Evening Post, and it gathered a lot more attention. And then after reading this article, a man called Maurice Frank wrote to Eustace, and then this was because he was frustrated about the lack of help he was receiving for being blind, and then he also wanted to gain a sense of independence through, and he believed a guide dog could help him. So so Eustace agreed, and then Frank traveled all the way to Europe to train a dog who was called Buddy. And then eventually Frank moved back to New York with him, and this proved so successful that Dorothy Eustace and Morris Frank opened and founded the Seeing Eye in 1929, the first American guide dog school. And this school is still the oldest guide dog school in existence. And next slide, please. And then a bit more about the history. Even though guide dogs were being trained from the early 20th century, it wasn't until the 70s that dogs were used for people with disabilities other than blindness. So Dr. Benita or Bonnie Bergen was the pioneer of like the modern day concept of the service dog. And when she was traveling in parts of Europe, Asia, especially kind of like Pakistan, Iran, Afghanistan, she saw people who would use donkeys to help themselves with their daily lives if they couldn't manage it by themselves. And then, like Frank, she wanted to find a way for more people to gain independence. And she thought that using dogs would help. Because she knew donkeys wouldn't fit in the USA, but the idea of dogs made sense to her. So she first worked with a quadriplegic woman called Carrie Knaus, and then her service dog was named Abdul, and then she was the first service dog to be taught service dog commands. And then this was so successful that Bergen opened Canine Companions for Independence in San Francisco in 1975. And to this day, the Canine Companions for Independence helps train service dogs to carry out certain duties and then places them with people in need. Next slide. Thank you. So Bergen helped include service dogs in the Americans with Disabilities Act in 1990. And this was the first time that service dogs were legally recognized. So it was a huge landmark in the history of service dogs in the US. She helped the US Justice Department develop assistant dog regulations to fit in with this. And then she founded the Assistance Dog Institute in 1991. The Assistance Dog Institute is an educational institution dedicated to both education and research and development of new and better assistance dog methodologies. And then, funnily enough, in 2001, the California Bureau of Private and Post-Secondary Education approved the institute, and then it became a university, the Bergen University of Canine Studies. And this is the first university in the world to offer a degree in human canine life sciences and assistant dog education. And then next slide. So a bit more about different breeds of service dogs. They can be any breed. There's no limitation on what breed they need to be, although some dogs are much more suited to being service dogs. The ones that are more suited normally have good characteristics. So, for example, they could have high intelligence, be friendly, good with kids. Yeah. And then, so for example, Bernese mountain dogs, which the picture is on the slide, they're very cute, are loyal to their person, easygoing, and eager to please. And then these dogs have been more common to see as service dogs as the years have gone by. Yeah, thank you. Nowadays, there are many types of service dogs and not just guide dogs to help the blind or deaf. they can be used for physical or non-physical disabilities. Um, and then even today, thanks to the help of these institutions, we are learning how to use service dogs in many more different ways and to comfort many more people. So, for instance, dogs can be used for helping people suffering from seizures, and they can even help alert doctors and help their owners recover from these seizures. And then they can also help provide diabetes alerts, which I think is pretty incredible. So yeah, they're definitely being used in more ways now, and yeah, that's it for me.
Okay, and so for service dogs in non-Western cultures, beginning with indigenous cultures in Australia, service dogs have had a place there and in different indigenous cultures throughout the world for thousands of years. And in Australia, Aboriginals began interacting with dingoes thousands of years ago. The dingoes can play a role in their folklore as well. So they're a big part of their origin stories and totems. And one Aboriginal woman named Sonia Smallcombe says they're part of our dreaming, our totems, and their stories are embedded in our landscape. Um, they can also be seen as like literal grandparents or children in the family, and they're often interpreted as reincarnations of ancestors. And they serve to protect Aboriginal people, both physically from other tribes or animals, but also spiritually. They're seen as like keeping bad spirits away. And today, many tribes have more dogs than they do human children, which can cause a little bit of an issue between like Western Australians and Indigenous Australians because it's seen as a problem and they're often like the law force is like sent in to like kill the dogs. And Aboriginal peoples with a disability experience greater discrimination and social inequality compared to Western Australians. So, by utilizing service dogs, their mental, physical, and spiritual well being has been shown to improve, and the service dogs thus pose a potential to circumvent systemic racism present in the institutional practices in Australia. And then next slide. Another Indigenous culture where service dogs have been around for a really long time is in Canada and Alberta. So prior to the destruction of many Indigenous lifeways in the wake of colonization, they were very common among Indigenous cultures, and some Indigenous people refer to pre-colonial times as the dog days. Um, they were actually mainly used by women to lighten their workload, because it's seen as a woman's job to like move the household across vast distances. So they would utilize them to help pull things and haul sleds and such. Yeah, women responsible for training the dogs because they assisted in their responsibilities, and women had to be consulted before buying or selling a dog by their husbands. The people in Alberta also would consume the dogs ritualistically, and it was thought to have like healing purposes for the people. And similar to the Aboriginal Indigenous cultures, they were considered kin or even spiritual beings sometimes. And archaeological sites in the Kenai Indigenous region reveal some dog burials, but there aren't very many, likely due to their ritualistic consumption. And then, um, and then another Indigenous group that's widely studied in anthropology is the Hmong people, which is an Indigenous group of northern Vietnam. And the Hmong dogs are very rare. They're basically only found in that region, and they're like dock-tailed dogs. Um, Among this culture, the dogs are believed to have the ability to see and hear supernatural beings, so they can protect against evil spirits and ghosts. And during soul release rituals, which are like healing rituals because the Hmong basically believe that we're not one soul, but that everyone is like multiple souls that all have to be in harmony in order to be healthy. So if one soul is seen as like evil or sick, which is kind of the same thing in that culture, they have to like release the soul. And those bad spirits are known as dobs. And so dogs are utilized to like keep them at bay and aid in that healing ritual. So physically, they're utilized as hunting partners and protectors against like natural threats, and then spiritually against supernatural threats. And then there's also a cruel and false stereotype that Hmong people eat dogs just to eat them, uh, which is how Westerners or like some modern Asian cultures would perceive the Hmong eating dogs. But the reality is that they are participating in healing rituals um, and being killed and sacrificed in order to aid in health. And then another non-Western culture in which service dogs are kind of stigmatized today is China. So the modern Western concept of a service dog is still stigmatized and rarely utilized there. Less than 1% of elderly or disabled people have service dogs. And as of 2020, the country has 8 million people, but only 200 total guide dogs. So service dogs became legal in 2012, but the actual implementation of the law hasn't really gone on very much. And um, pets are also kind of commonly stolen in China by like lower income people for like consumption. So in 2016, a blind man's dog was stolen, which kind of made headlines. And then service dogs began being talked about more in the public in China. So the dog that was stolen to be eaten, was one of the 10 registered guide dogs in Beijing, a city of more than 20 million and one of 100 in the entire country at the time. And their lack of service animals reflects the country's poor policies when it comes to aiding the disabled in general. So in recent years, it's becoming a little bit less stigmatized, but they still have a ways to go in terms of accepting and destigmatizing service dogs.
Okay, so now
Wait,
we're gonna
oh
go.
wait, hold on. So sorry.
What?
I'm like running out of time, so I'm gonna like stop this and then save it. Hopefully